Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson. And today we are joined by Sarah Phillipe, breast implant illness and detox expert. Sarah is a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and a board certified holistic health practitioner. And she believes the solution to healing goes well beyond explant surgery. In today's conversation, we explore not only the connections between breast implant illness and autoimmunity, but taking radical personal responsibility to create healing. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. It's such a pleasure. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I am as well. This is such an important topic, and I think it's under discussed. And as we mentioned before we hit record, it's a very deep subject. So we will start with your journey, because I guarantee this is not what you thought you would be doing when you were a little girl. So how did you get into this world?
Yeah, so that's, yes, very true. So I would say, my desire for, a certain aesthetic, large breasts really started in childhood, just a lot of different messaging around what makes a woman a woman. And, it ended up creating a lot of insecurity, body image issues in my teenage years and even young adulthood. And, I ended up becoming a nurse. So I worked in conventional, medicine in the field of nursing for many, many years, probably 13 years. And I ended up getting really into more of a fitness lifestyle, bodybuilding, and kind of really getting very lean. And of course, when you're that lean, you really don't have much breast tissue. And I already started with not very much. And, seeing these women on stage, which I never really wanted for myself, I just really wanted that look. Seeing these women on stage with, just really, really fit physiques and large breasts.
Right.
That was kind of, I had this kind of instilled in childhood that was important, but it really kind of put the nail in the coffin for me, so to speak. I felt like that was the driving force that led to my desire to get them placed. And so I ended up deciding around 30 years old to get my breast implants placed that I had always dreamed about, that I would one day have. And I would say within about 6 months, I started developing lots and lots of unexplainable symptoms, starting with symptoms that are really common for hypothyroid and Hashimoto's. So a lot of hair loss, fatigue, weight gain, heart difficulty keeping it off, just brain fog, you name it. And I ended up seeking some help. I went to my, conventional doctor, asked for some lab work. That all checked out, quote unquote, normal, but we know that story is all too common. And I, was told, hey, your lab work is fine. Maybe, think about some counseling or, spicing up your sex life, because I was dealing with low sex drive as well. And I just thought, that is just not the kind of answer I'm looking for.
Yeah, smart
that
girl.
is not helpful. So I continued my search, and all the while I continued developing lots of new symptoms, lots of gas and bloating and food intolerances, anxiety, heart palpitations, insomnia, feeling really cold. I had to sleep with a hot pack at night because I could not keep my body temperature up. Mind racing, social anxiety, loud sounds, bright lights, chemical smells, all just completely threw me over the edge. It just irritated my nervous system so much. I started to not be able to tolerate physical workouts anymore because pushing my body the way I had always been pushing it was just too much stress now. I couldn't tolerate any kind of difficult conversation with another person because that also was too much stress on my body. And my nervous system was just shot. It was so dysregulated. And I had brain fog. I couldn't remember anything. And in the nursing field, like you've got to be on your
Sure.
game.
Yeah. No offense, but I would not want to have you as my nurse in that state.
I wouldn't either. I remember just reading something on a screen for work, continuing education, things like that, and being tested on it later. And I just had to read it, 20 times just to comprehend it. And then after I had finished testing, I would instantly forget, like it was gone. A hard time remembering people's names and names of things and just things like that. So it was really, really challenging. And I was a really hard person to be around because I was miserable.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I just went down this path of trying to figure out what was wrong with me because I wasn't willing to just accept that, this has no explanation.
The new you.
Yeah. The new me. And it really impacted everything in life. It impacted my work, my job, my relationship with my husband, relationship with my family and friends. And it just showed up in so many areas of my life. So I wasn't willing to settle for that. So I ended up going down the path of, finding functional medicine and finding functional diagnostic nutrition, became a practitioner thinking, hey, if I'm going through this, I can't be the only one. And intuitively, I had the instinct that it might be the implants, but there was just nobody out there talking about it back then. There were no websites, no Facebook groups, nothing on social media. And I even remember typing into Google, breast symptoms developing after breast augmentation and really didn't find anything.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go off of a hunch. Fast forward 6 years later, I had done lots of the healing work that we now teach, right? With myself, for myself, and gotten a little bit better. I'd say about 50% better. But the straw that broke the camel's back for me was I was having a hard time being able to conceive. So I ended up discovering I had stage 4 endometriosis. I did not have any symptoms prior to the implants, but I had horrible symptoms after getting the implants. That was one of my main struggles. And so that led to me finally making the decision to get them out. And by that time,
priorities.
Right. By that time, I was really ready too, here in my mind, I had done that inner work, really reflecting on why did I get these in the first place? Why did I feel I needed them to be beautiful and worthy as a woman? Yeah. Right. And so doing that deeper work, I was able to comfortably and confidently say, hey, it's time to get them out. And so I did. And it wasn't like this quick fix. I had to continue to do some deeper inner work as well, not just the physical terrain, but mentally, emotionally, things like that. And that's kind of the short version.
And I think one of the reasons I was so excited to talk about this is, as I said, I think it is under discussed even still. And I like connecting the dots for people. That's why I do this. And so I'm curious, it seems to me, and this is your world, 6 months seems pretty quick for you to start having symptoms. Is that common?
It's kind of all over the map for people. Okay. People can start having symptoms right after surgery. It could be, 6 months or a year later. It could be a decade or two later.
Okay. Probably depends on what's going on in your body to begin with when you get there. Okay.
I think it depends on, what other stressors someone has present in their lives, sure, what other things they're exposed to, in addition to their genetic weaknesses.
Yeah. So let's talk. You gave us a long list of your own personal symptoms. And I love that you prefaced it in the beginning. Your initial symptoms really are mimic or overlap or almost the same as hypothyroid, Hashimoto's. And so, for listeners, it's sometimes really hard to pull those threads of like, this is this and that is that. But we're having this conversation, at least in my mind, as a potential driver for autoimmunity is breast implants and breast implant illness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so is it one of those things that's kind of like any of your symptoms? It sounds like another kind of like mold toxicity. Any of your symptoms could be from breast implant illness.
Yeah, and it's such a wide range of symptoms that people can experience. It's like pages long. So how is that? It's really difficult to get that kind of differential diagnosis, if you want to call it that. There's not a real, true diagnosis here with breast implant illness. And a lot of these symptoms people can experience overlap with autoimmunity. And autoimmunity itself can be triggered by the implants, and it may resolve when you get the implants out. Autoimmunity itself is not a root cause, right? It's a downstream effect of something bigger going on. And so, I think it's helpful to talk about how breast implants are stressors on the body in a number of ways so that people can kind of understand that. And so I usually share 3 different things. So first of all, they're a physical stressor, right? As a foreign object, it's not your own body, it doesn't belong to you. The body sees that it's not self, and that stimulates and kind of tires out the immune system. Your body will create a capsule around each of those implants as a way to kind of wall them off and protect the body from them, because your body knows it doesn't belong there, right? And your body can kind of overdo it a little bit and end up with, a capsular contracture, really, really thick capsules. And that can lead to, that's actually been shown to be connected to the onset of breast implant illness, is that really, really thick capsule, but on top of that, capsular contracture.
And so that would somebody even know this is what's going on inside?
They could. I mean, sometimes capsular contracture, it looks really distorted. Like the implants will start to look a little wonky, or like really high or really far out, or just really lopsided and hard and painful.
Okay.
Right? So and depending on the level of contracture, that can determine how much discomfort and how strange they look.
Right.
But, we're continuously activating the immune system with these implants in place. And eventually that can result in immune dysregulation. And over time, that can lead to kind of a muted immune response and the inability to fight off different infections or pathogens. And that can lead to the overgrowth of opportunistic organisms and reactivation of, dormant organisms. So we tend to see a lot of just different pathogens that are present, or infections that are present with people who are dealing with breast implant illness. And so you might see things like Epstein-Barr be reactivated and start replicating out of control. Lyme disease is another one, because a lot of us have already been exposed to these things, but our immune system has been able to keep them in check.
Which it should.
Yeah. And then you throw something like implants in the picture, and it might not be able to do that very well, right? So we can definitely see lots of different autoimmune triggering organisms present in the gut when we, do a stool analysis as well. So, certain bugs are connected to certain autoimmune conditions. And if we've got overgrowth of those, that can put you at risk, of course.
Sure.
And then we often see low secretory IgA on stool analysis, which is, that main immunoglobulin responsible for, keeping pathogens in check in the gut specifically. And, they produce their own biotoxins when they overloads the system. And when we look under the hood, we see the damage, right? We don't always have the evidence in the form of studies to support it, but we see what's going on, right? When we look at the lab work. So there's that. And then they're a chemical stressor as well, right? So there's so many, it's not just silicone or saline. There's so many different cytotoxic, neurotoxic, and carcinogenic chemicals and heavy metals that are really highly inflammatory to the tissues and the cells and the organs. And, just to name a few, there's things like methyl ethyl ketone, cyclohexone, hexanone, acetone, xylene, phenol, those are all neurotoxins. And then we have things like toluene, benzene, dichloromethane, those are all carcinogens. You have things like talcum powder, formaldehyde, lacquer thinner, printing ink, metal cleaning acid, and then heavy metals, things like tin, aluminum, lead, platinum, in addition to the silicone.
I'm shaking my head because I'm like, why? It is the same thing though when we talk about food or beauty products or, it's, and I love that you said this is beyond saline or silicone, right? This isn't saline implants are safe and silicone or not. That's not even, there's so much more going on here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they both have silicone, even though one is called a saline implant. The saline implants also have a silicone shell. Right. And silicone is actually considered to be an adjuvant connected to autoimmunity turning on, basically. And some people really believe that that is the mechanism for breast implant illness. Now, we have different opinions from different researchers, of course, but that's just one thought. And so all of these things create this toxic terrain in the body that can also feed downstream, pathogenic organisms in the body. And then we also see a lot of biofilm issues with breast implants. And breast implants, they send a lot of the different fluids and, the implant shell and capsule and things like that to pathology for testing. And that's where we get to see what organisms are growing, the biofilm that's there. And biofilm can be hugely problematic for immune system dysfunction or dysregulation.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so in this setting of immune dysregulation and pathogenic organisms and toxins and all of that, certain autoimmune triggering organisms, right, we're left really vulnerable to autoimmunity. And, you may have genetic predisposition towards some of these autoimmune conditions that, may just be triggered by or turned on by something like breast implants.
Sure. Is there, I know there's so much I want to talk about. I'm guessing your thought is anybody who's listening who has autoimmunity and has implants should take a closer look. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. You should at least consider it as a possible trigger or at least part of the picture. It may not be the only trigger in your story, in your picture. However, it could be a significant part of it. So one thing I always encourage people to do, because we don't have lab testing that says yes or no, you do or don't have breast implant illness, right? There's no diagnostic criteria for that. However, we got to look at the timeline, right? So what was going on around the time of onset of any symptoms? Did you have breast implants then? Did you get them, shortly before that, or did you get implants after that? And did things get worse after your implants? Right. So we kind of look at the timeline and connect the dots between when certain symptoms developed and when you had the implants.
Okay. And so when somebody's at that point, and I want to touch on this and then maybe go what would be backwards, which is the kind of preparing for explantation and expectations and things like that. But if somebody is, maybe this has been on somebody's mind, maybe like you, it's been in the back of the mind, like, I wonder if this could be, and maybe hearing this conversation is they're like, okay, you know what, I need to get these removed. Mm-hmm. Are there, in your opinion, are there certain kinds of surgeons they need to go to, or certain kinds of things that need to be done in that explantation surgery other than just having a plastic surgeon remove the implant?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And this is one of the most important things that people need to understand. Don't just rush off and go ask your plastic surgeon who placed them to take them out for you. That's probably not going to go very well. So what you want is a plastic surgeon who is an expert in the explant procedure itself. So there's a great website you can check out. It's not my website. It's a really helpful website with a list of surgeons by country and state. It's breastimplantillness.com. So that's a great place to start. They give you lots of information there about each surgeon. You want someone who, first of all, believes in what you're going through, right? You want someone who believes in breast implant illness, that they can be problematic, and who's going to take that process seriously of helping you get them out for the best possible outcome. And so what that looks like is having them removed, ideally en bloc, which is the implant and the capsule that's formed around them is removed intact together, not cut open. So once that capsule is cut open, we don't always know if there's a rupture. There can be a rupture or even a leak, and that could be negative on an MRI, right? So even with imaging, it can be a false negative. And so we want to protect the body. Don't open that up and have all the contents of that implant spilling out all over the lymphatic system, with it's very dense in the breast area. And if they're not able to be removed en bloc, minimally, they need to go back in and make sure all of the even the tiniest specks of capsule are removed from the body. Now, most plastic surgeons are just going to go in, cut open the capsule, take out the implants, and leave the capsule in your body and close you up. Because capsule capsulectomy, which is what that procedure is called, is very complicated sometimes. Sometimes there's a lot of risk involving puncturing the lung and leading to pneumothorax, which we want to avoid, right? So that requires a really skilled surgeon to be able to do that for you confidently. And so I highly recommend someone who's had a lot of experience with this and has a lot of, a good proven track record. And so talking to other women who've used that surgeon, if it's someone you're considering, can be helpful as well. I caution people in the Facebook groups because I think they can be very kind of victim-y and negative, but I think that can be a decent place to get opinions about surgeons because a lot of people.
Or you could probably ask a surgeon you're considering.
Yes.
For
some references.
Referrals. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, making sure you're all on the same page about what's expected. And I think it's helpful. And I would want this, and I did have this, but, getting your implants back, you bought those, they are yours. If you ever need them for any reason in the future, it's good to have them for testing, or if there were a lawsuit involved at any point, you want to have those in your possession. Pictures and video, if possible, of the surgery and the capsules completely removed and showing your pockets are completely clear of capsule. So I think seeing that proof is important because I'll tell you, I cannot count how many times I've had clients say, oh, they said they got it all out, and they ended up going back for an exploratory surgery and found 1, 2, sometimes even 3 capsules inside that person's body that did not get removed, and the surgeon lied.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. And so kind of along that line, if somebody, because I think this is a newer conversation. So if somebody who had been ill and connected their own dots and went either back to their surgeon or to another surgeon and just had the implants removed, is there something you would recommend them to do at this point to make sure that the capsule was removed completely?
I'm not an expert on imaging, but I don't know. There may be imaging that could possibly show some of that. I don't know for sure. Okay. That would be worth talking to, their doctor about. But I think, sometimes it's worth having an exploratory surgery with a surgeon who is skilled in explant to be sure, peace of mind. I mean, this is the rest of your life we're talking about here. Right. And capsule left behind creates the same problems that implants do because it's immune stimulating material and it still will contain silicone and different toxicants that have bled into that space and become kind of woven into that matrix. And there can still be biofilm and bacteria and things hiding out in that capsule. So it's going to continue to stimulate the same problems. So I think that's really important for people to understand. You've got to have that capsule out.
Yeah. And so if you've had, and even again, like you said, if you were told it was out, or fully removed and you're not improving, and we're going to talk about some other, because I'm guessing this isn't just, okay, right. That was the problem. We removed the problem. Now you're better. It's not magic, right?
Right.
So I just wanted to kind of circle back and highlight that for listeners that, maybe a deeper exploration of some sort. I'm not telling people to run out and get surgery. It just,
right.
To keep that on your list of considerations and don't think there's a check mark next to it just because you had explantation.
Yes.
So let's talk about some of, I just said, and because you let us know, it's not just this physical piece of removing, even, completely successfully and properly. Yeah. Right. What are, let's talk about kind of expectations and some of this other work that you find essential to do.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, I may be a little biased because I don't really have interaction with all the women who are better after their explant, right? I tend to see the ones who still are very sick and need help. So my impression, though, is that what you see online on social media is not always the reality. Okay. And you see a lot of people posting stories about, here, look at my eyes before implants or before my explant and the day after my implants came out. Now look at them. They're so white and bright and, I'm all better. And that sets an unrealistic expectation for people. And it sets them up if they don't get that same outcome, to feel really hopeless and lost and discouraged. And so I want people to know and understand that this isn't a quick fix for every single person. Those who feel that way, that, that this was a miraculous kind of healing experience for them, great. They may have
and they are the minority.
They are the minority.
Yeah.
Great. And they may just have different genetics, different, maybe not the same stressors in addition to the breast implants that you do. It just depends on so many factors for people. And so for people who, are going into or considering explant, just go into it with hoping for the best, but having realistic expectations that even if it's not miraculous for you, it doesn't mean there isn't hope, right? There's still hope that you still can heal. There's just more work that needs to be done.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Well, and I remember when I first started in my journey of functional medicine, and I was like, the root cause, right? Plural.
Right. Yeah,
Going to find,
really
and even for myself personally, it started that way. I want to find my root cause, my one.
Yes.
And that, I think, is really the crux of this whole conversation, is the with breast implant illness or breast implants in general. Even if, I'm not a big fan of labels, because
I don't like labels either.
They don't really solve a problem, but they're just a piece. They may be the thing that pushed you past the tipping point.
Yes.
But they're not the only thing, or they wouldn't be the problem, a problem at all, Yeah. So I just want people to understand that that's where it gets tricky, because back to, if you know and trust that they were removed properly, that leaves all these other areas. You mentioned, infections and toxins and all kinds of other things that are probably already going on in some degree. And like you said, if you're genetically like this amazing detoxer, maybe taking that big load out, your body can do the rest like it should. You probably need some support. The chances are pretty good. By the time you're listening to us, for sure, or at a place where you're considering taking the implants out to begin with,
right?
You need to support your body, your whole body, not just breast tissue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, we need to be thinking about chronic illness in a different way. It's multifactorial in today's world. And so it's going to require a multi-therapeutic approach, right? Not just tunnel vision on one thing and expecting one action to resolve everything.
Right.
We need to really, and my philosophy is, we really need to be taking radical personal responsibility for our health. We can't be blaming everyone else around us, right? We can't expect doctors to fix us. Right. Only you can heal you, right? And so that takes that, like, owning that radical responsibility.
Which is also, and I know you don't mean it in a blaming way, but it's power. It's us.
Yes.
It's responsibility, but it's also opportunity.
Yes.
And we don't need to wait for somebody else to fix us. That's not how it works. That's really not what medicine is. So I love that you said that. I want to touch on, because I know I can't keep you all day, but I want to make sure we do talk a little bit about, and as far as I think some of those other factors, listeners can go to probably any other episode, and we talk about all of the lifestyle factors and all of the areas of addressing, are going to be the same. Right. I want to touch on the emotional piece of, you mentioned even with your own journey, really before surgery, you did that work to figure out, why did I even get them? Why did I want them? Why have I always wanted them? Or, why is that even important and part of my identity? What do you feel there's a process of a certain amount of emotional work that should be done before explantation, or does it matter?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to go into it feeling emotionally just solid, like this is the right decision. I'm not fearful. I'm not afraid of what I'm going to look like, right? Because yes, you're going to look different. And we can't always fix that, what's been done. or doctors or surgeons can't always. It's never going to be exactly the same as before you got your implants placed. So we really need to be addressing, I think, the mental and emotional aspect of why we got the implants in the first place. And so for me, it just took like digging deep. Okay. Like, I'd have conversations with my husband while we took our dogs for a walk about this, like when was it that I felt like I really needed breasts, like big breasts, to be sexy and a real woman?
Right.
And so, I kind of thought about my childhood, and I pinpointed a certain moment in time that really stood out to me. It was a memory. I don't have a lot of memories of this age, but it was like, oh my gosh, that it started there. And yes, of course, society and everything we're exposed to, in all the different advertisements and messaging, yes, that contributes as well. But my own tribe, right? My own tribe growing up is where it started.
Sure.
And so understanding that helped me process it and start to gain a different respect for my body and a different appreciation for it, and really detach who I am from what I look like. Right. And so that's what I think people need to kind of go through. And it might be their own unique path. It's not going to be exactly the same as mine, but
Sure.
I think it's important to be feeling emotionally stable when you go in for explant surgery.
I love that. I think it's, yeah, I mean, because we're so multifaceted. There could be a part of you that's like, get these things out of me. If they're making me sick, I can't be sick anymore. But if you haven't detached from that whole process of getting them and having them, and I could see where you'd get stuck. We know, we've talked about it all the time, the emotional component to wellness and illness, and especially and autoimmunity. And so
Absolutely.
that makes really good sense. I want to highlight as well, there are ways to augment, or a lot of, I don't know, I shouldn't say a lot, I know of explant specialists that do fat transfers, and so they're not just like leaving. There are options of trying to be as comfortable and happy with the breasts that you will then have for the rest of your life. And so I think that's important for people to know, that there is this whole wonderful new world opening up that can give us some safer options as well.
Yeah. And I want to just touch on that briefly. I'll just say I had fat transfer myself. Had I known better, I would have not made that choice.
Okay.
I think it really it just depending on the technique, because different surgeons have different technique. And if they're doing liposuction to gather fat to then put in the breast tissue, that can cause other issues. It can make it look like you might have a cyst on imaging, and it's just, calcified fatty tissue. The liposuction itself can really, really disrupt lymphatic flow and the fascia, and that can cause a whole slew of additional problems with being able to detox properly and so many other things. But lots of chronic pain issues can come out of that as well, because with the fascia, it connects everything to everything in the body. Right. So we're really disrupting that. And I will tell you, just from my own personal experience, just alone, without considering the fat graft, my surgeon had to scrape the ribs to get my capsules off. And just totally scraping up the fascia as well. And I have a lot of really tight tissue in there that's painful. And I have had to do a lot of body work to loosen that up and get that to become freed up again, so that I have all the mobility that I should have. But it can impact everything else. It can lead to neck pain or back pain, or, and you just don't always connect the dots.
Right. I love that you said that, because that's again, post-op, even without a fat transfer, that probably sounds like that would have been your also, for me, hearing that is like really, but you're not stuck with that pain, because you have the knowledge, and that's why we have the conversation. Nobody should settle for where they are. And so if you fix one problem and you end up with another problem, then you do the work to release the fascia and get yourself, and you're educated enough to know, the down, like you said, the downstream. If I'm not addressing that, then I'm going to end up with pain in other places. And the whole point is to not be in chronic pain. That's
right.
the whole point.
Yes.
I know. So I'm so glad that you shared that. And I just so appreciate you showing up so fully and sharing, the what I would imagine were vulnerable parts of your story and details, because I know it's just so valuable for listeners. It really is. I think, again, this conversation is so important to have, because autoimmunity numbers are ridiculous anyway, but I just believe there is such a large part of the population that has breast implants and has illness, call it whatever you want. And they really need to hear these conversations. So
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. So before I let you go, sure. I would love for you to give listeners one thing they can do today. And this could be you can surprise me, but one thing people can do today to start to improve their health. One step.
I think, and this has come out of like years and years of figuring out like what people need, including myself, right? And I used to say things like, restorative sleep and, drinking enough water and getting the bowels moving. And that's all very important. Yes. But I think the most important thing where people can start now is working on the nervous system, working on regulating their nervous system. And that takes consistent effort. It doesn't happen overnight. So even something, you could be something as simple as, breath work, tapping, EFT. It could be as involved as something like somatic experiencing, working on rewiring the brain, right? And to teach the brain that it's safe, right? That it's safe to heal, it's safe to let go, it's safe to fill in the blank. And when we're stuck in this chronic fight, flight, freeze, or I can't think of the other word at the moment, fight, flight, freeze, or whatever. We'll move on because I can't think of what it is. But anyway, you get my point. My point is when we're stuck in that state, our nervous systems are overwhelmed, right? And we can't actually heal in that state. So we need to work on regulating the nervous system. And the simplest, easiest thing people can do that I personally love is get outside, get in the sunshine, take yourself away from all of your screens and entertainments and infotainments, and far gaze, right? Listen to the sounds of nature, listen to the birds chirp, set your eyes on a horizon, because it's that pupillary dilation. It's you hearing the nature, the sounds of nature that actually tell your nervous system it's safe.
Right. Love that.
Yeah.
Gold. I knew you were going to just pull out some kind of magic. It's amazing. And for people who are listening on the go and aren't going to check the show notes, I used to be one of those people. Where's the best place to find you?
So my website is reversingBreastImplantIllness.com, kind of a long one. I'm on YouTube as well and Instagram. YouTube is an interesting place to check out, and it's just my name, Sarah Phillipe. If you were to search the Life Beyond Explant movement, you'll find it. And it's just a lot of women sharing their stories. And so I'm really wanting to use that platform as a place to highlight these stories.
That's incredible. Incredible. What an amazing resource. Sarah, thank you so much. You really have given listeners a lot to think about today.
Great. I'm glad.
For everyone listening, remember you can get the transcripts and show notes by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, This is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.